Humans did not domesticate dogs, and the real story is far stranger than anything you have been told. The common version says a brave ancient human found wolf pups, raised them, trained them, and created loyal companions. That story is heartwarming, widely repeated, and almost entirely wrong in every important detail. Here is what actually happened, and why the truth is so much more interesting than the myth. It is 15,000 years ago. You are a hunter-gatherer in Eurasia, and your life is brutally simple. Wake up, try not to die, find food, try not to die again, sleep, repeat indefinitely without exception. One night around your fire, you hear something moving in the darkness just beyond the light's reach. You freeze, and then two yellow eyes blink at you slowly from the shadows without moving closer. Most animals at that moment would either flee immediately or attempt to eat your face without hesitation. That specific moment, repeated across countless fires across thousands of years, is where dogs begin. But it did not begin because humans decided to tame an apex predator through sheer determination and will. Anyone who has spent time around actual wolves knows why that particular plan ends very badly for everyone. You can raise a wolf pup from birth, give it everything, and it remains biologically and fundamentally a wolf. It keeps wolf instincts, wolf drives, wolf danger, regardless of how much you love it or how long you try. Wildlife sanctuaries have known this for generations, and the evidence from zoos is completely unambiguous. So, if humans did not domesticate wolves through force of will, what actually happened over those thousands of years? The leading theory, the one with the strongest scientific support, is both simpler and more extraordinary. The wolves chose this, at least in the slow, unconscious, generational way that natural selection works. Here is how it happened, and it starts with something very undramatic, which is human garbage. As humans became more efficient hunters, they started generating something no other predator produced consistently. Reliable, regular, predictable leftover food, discarded bones, scraps, and animal parts they did not use. For an opportunistic scavenger like a wolf, a human camp generating consistent waste was an extraordinary resource. Some wolves, not the majority, just some of them, started lingering near human camps waiting for scraps. And here is the critical detail that completely changes how you understand everything that came after it. It was not the dominant, aggressive, bold wolves that edged toward the fires and the people near them. Those wolves, the biggest and most fearsome ones, wanted absolutely nothing to do with humans and stayed away. The wolves that crept closer were the ones with a slightly lower stress response to human proximity, slightly less afraid, slightly more curious, slightly calmer around the terrifying, fire-wielding, spear-throwing creatures. And those particular wolves got fed, while the more aggressive distant ones had harder times finding food. The wolves surviving best near human camps were by definition the ones with the calmest temperaments toward people. Their puppies inherited those tendencies, and their puppies inherited them further, compounding across generations slowly. Natural selection operating without any human intention started nudging wolf behavior in a specific direction toward us. Now here is where something genuinely extraordinary enters the story through a Russian scientist most people have never heard of. In the 1950s, a geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev was working in Soviet Russia under genuinely difficult conditions. Genetics had been declared a bourgeois pseudoscience by Soviet authorities, which required a moment to fully absorb. Belyaev, who was brilliant, continued his research under cover of studying fox breeding for the Soviet fur industry. What he was actually doing was selectively breeding silver foxes for exactly one trait and one trait only: tameness, specifically how the foxes responded when a human approached them and attempted to make contact. Each generation, he tested all the foxes and bred only those showing the least fear and aggression toward people. That was the entire experiment. Select for calmness around humans. See what happens after enough generations pass. What happened next was so strange that it took the scientific community decades to fully process the implications. Within just a few generations, decades rather than millennia, the foxes began changing in ways nobody had predicted. They did not simply become friendlier, they began transforming physically in ways that had nothing to do with the selection. Their ears became floppy where they had previously stood upright in the alert posture of a wild animal. Their tails began to curl upward instead of hanging straight as a wild foxtail normally would. Their coats developed patches of white and brown instead of the solid silver of their wild ancestors. Their faces got rounder and softer, and their skulls changed shape in ways nobody had deliberately selected for. Their reproductive cycles shifted, and they began barking differently than wild foxes had ever barked before. They had started behaving like dogs, and nobody had told them to. Nobody had selected for these specific traits. Belyaev had selected only for tameness and gotten floppy ears, spotted coats, and curly tails as unrequested bonuses. What he had discovered is now called domestication syndrome, and it changed how scientists think about evolution entirely. Certain genetic pathways for tameness and low stress response are linked on a deep level to physical developmental traits. When you breed for friendliness, you get floppy ears as a bonus package that nobody ordered but everybody receives. When you select for calm behavior, you get spotted coats appearing that have nothing to do with calm behavior. The package deal of domestication is far weirder and more interconnected than anyone had previously suspected or imagined. And crucially, Belyaev showed it does not take thousands of years under strong enough selection pressure to see results. The fundamental character of a species can shift dramatically in just a handful of generations with the right pressure, which means wolves near ancient human camps may have started showing dog-like traits faster than anyone previously thought. But here is the question that does not get asked loudly enough when people tell this story about wolves. What did the humans actually do when the wolves started getting friendlier and less frightened of them? This was always a two-way street, and the human side of the street matters just as much as the wolf side. At some point, some ancient person had to consciously decide not to throw their spear at the nearby wolf. They had to decide this creature was tolerable, maybe useful, maybe something they wanted to keep around a while. The genetic evidence shows this meeting between wolves and humans happened more than once in more than one location. East Asia, the Middle East, and possibly Europe all have genetic signatures suggesting independent domestication events occurred. The meeting between wolves and humans was not a single magical moment, but a repeated pattern across the ancient world, a repeated tendency for these two species to independently discover that each found the other genuinely useful. And once humans figured out that a semi-tamed wolf could actually be extraordinarily useful, everything accelerated quickly. A proto-dog near the camp warned when other predators approached in the dark before humans could detect them. It helped track prey using a nose that made human senses look laughably inadequate by direct comparison. It acted as a living alarm system that required no invention, no maintenance, and fed itself partly on scraps. The wolves that liked humans survived better in human company, and the humans that kept wolves survived better in the wild. A co-evolutionary partnership formed not because anyone planned it, but because it worked spectacularly well for both parties. Now let's talk about what domestication actually did to a dog's brain, because this is where things get remarkable. Dogs are not simply wolves that learn to be polite around humans over a sufficient number of generations. They are cognitively different from wolves in ways that are genuinely astonishing when you examine them carefully. One of the most striking differences involves something you probably do automatically without thinking about it at all. A wolf will not do this, not even a wolf pup raised by humans from birth with intensive daily socialization. A domestic dog puppy with minimal human contact will follow your pointing gesture reliably without any training at all. This is genetic, not learned. Dogs have been shaped across thousands of generations to read human communication specifically. Dogs make eye contact with humans in a way their wolf ancestors would never have done in the wild. In wolf society, direct sustained eye contact is a dominance challenge that signals an imminent fight is coming. But dogs evolved to hold your gaze, to look to you for information, to treat human faces as meaningful signals. And when a dog looks into your eyes, both your brains release oxytocin, the bonding hormone between caregivers and infants. You are literally chemically bonding with your dog when you make eye contact, and they are bonding with you. A carnivore that by all biological logic should want to eat us has been rewired over millennia to love us instead. Dogs also have a facial muscle that wolves completely lack, a tiny structure above the eyebrows called the levator anguli oculi medialis. When a dog uses this muscle, it makes their face look heartbreakingly sad, soft, young, and irresistibly adorable. It is the muscle responsible for the puppy dog eyes expression that no wolf can make however hard it tries. This muscle appears to have been directly selected for across thousands of years because it is devastatingly effective on humans. It makes us want to take care of them, feel responsible for their well-being, attend to their apparent emotional state. The dog unknowingly evolved a biological tool for manipulating human emotions, and it is among the most effective tools ever developed. You thought you were the one choosing your dog, but your dog's ancestors spent 10,000 years evolving to make you choose them. By 10,000 years ago, when humans were just beginning to figure out agriculture and settle into permanent villages, something is notable. Dogs were already so deeply embedded in human society that they were appearing in human burials regularly and with ceremony. Some of the oldest confirmed human dog burials have the dog arranged beside the human with a human hand resting on the animal. These were people who had lived alongside dogs and wanted them present in death the same way they were present in life. Consider what that means about the nature of this relationship, even at its very beginning 15,000 years ago. The first domestic relationship in all of human history was one of genuine companionship, not purely utility or labor. In a world of constant physical hardship, brutal survival pressure, and life expectancy that modern people cannot easily imagine, humans were spending emotional energy on their dogs, grieving them, burying them with the same care as human family members. This is among the oldest emotional impulses we have direct evidence of in the archaeological record anywhere on Earth, and it is still operating right now as you watch this, completely unchanged in its fundamental emotional logic. What came next, after that initial domestication, was one of the most dramatic transformations in the history of life. The natural pressure that started the best process, select for tameness and get dogs, was replaced by deliberate human intention. Humans discovered they were extraordinarily creative and varied in what they wanted from the dogs they were breeding. Over several thousand years, humans bred dogs deliberately for specific jobs they needed done with precision and reliability. Hunting dogs, herding dogs, guard dogs, sled dogs, war dogs, and eventually lap dogs for aristocrats with considerable leisure time. Different sizes, shapes, temperaments, and instincts were selected deliberately to produce a range unlike anything else in nature. The genetic variation inside the dog genome was exploited to produce body types and behavioral profiles of astonishing diversity. In roughly 15,000 years, which is essentially nothing in evolutionary terms, humans produced the Great Dane and the Dachshund, the greyhound built purely for speed, and the bulldog, which is shaped like a very sad loaf of bread, somehow full of personality. The wolf body plan, honed by millions of years of natural selection, was taken apart and rebuilt in hundreds of configurations, each one reflecting a specific human need or preference, or at some historical point, apparently just an interesting aesthetic whim. The modern breeds most people recognize are actually extremely recent, most defined formally in the 19th century. Victorian era England took the 10,000-year project of dog domestication and turned it into a competitive spectator sport. And now we arrive at the modern moment and the genuinely strange relationship humans currently have with these animals. Dogs today occupy a position in human society that no other animal on Earth comes remotely close to occupying. They live inside our homes, sleep in our beds, appear in our legal wills as beneficiaries of significant inherited wealth. There are dogs right now with their own social media accounts, merchandise lines, and professionally planned birthday parties. There is a dog alive somewhere today with a measurably better quality of life than most humans in recorded history. It does not know this, and it does not care, because it has just located a sock on the floor, and the sock is extraordinary. We spend more money annually on pet care than many countries spend on education, and consider this entirely reasonable. We develop genuine grief when dogs die, grief that neurologically resembles the grief experienced for human family members. This is because, as far as our evolved brains are concerned, dogs are more or less classified alongside family members. We train them, talk to them, apologize to them, ask them about their day, despite knowing they cannot verbally answer. And we feel somehow that they understand anyway, because in many ways that matter biologically and emotionally, they do. None of this was planned, intended, or predicted by the wolves that first crept toward firelight looking for discarded bones. A wolf was slightly less afraid than its siblings, had puppies slightly less afraid than average, repeated across millennia. And 15,000 years later, someone is spending $40 on artisanal, grain-free, salmon-based premium dog food. Evolution is extraordinarily patient, and it has a genuinely well-developed sense of the absurd and the unexpected. But here is the thing I want to leave you with, because I think it is the genuinely remarkable part of this story. In virtually every other case of animal domestication, humans were clearly in charge of the entire process from the beginning. We captured animals, penned them, bred them specifically and deliberately for our own purposes and our own needs exclusively. Their meat, their milk, their labor, their hides. The relationship was largely one-directional and entirely on our terms. Dogs were different from the very beginning because dogs were participants in their own domestication, not passive subjects of it. They approached us, they adapted to us, their brains changed to understand us in ways that remain unique across all animals, and we adapted to them neurologically, emotionally, and culturally in ways that measurably changed what humans became over time. Researchers have found that human populations with dogs performed better in certain survival situations in demonstrable ways. Dogs provided warnings, helped on hunts, may have contributed to the success of human expansion into new environments significantly. There is a genuine scientific argument, not a fringe one, that dog domestication was a significant factor in human success. That without dogs, the trajectory of human civilization could have been measurably and meaningfully different than it became. We did not simply create dogs. In some real and important sense, dogs helped create what humans eventually became. That wolf that crept toward the firelight 15,000 years ago was beginning something neither party could have understood. A partnership that would outlast every empire, every language, every civilization that rose and fell in the time since. A partnership that turned two very different creatures into something that feels to both of them something like family. And the next time your dog stares at you with that expression while you eat dinner, remember what that expression is. That is 15,000 years of mutual evolution expressing itself in the most direct and honest way it knows how. That bond was built slowly, accidentally, at enormous cost to the rational decision-making of wolves everywhere involved. It was worth it for them, and it was absolutely worth it for us too.